today on CityCast Madison. It's the Friday News Roundup. This week, I'm joined by CityCast Madison's Hayley Sperling. A city staff meeting gets heated on the future of housing on Madison's west side. And early voting is officially open. We break down what's on the April 2nd ballot, referenda and all. It's Friday, March 22nd. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Welcome to the Friday News Roundup, y'all. Today's theme, civic engagement, housing fights, and it's election time, baby. Joining me today is our fabulous, thoughtful, creative, wonderful, kind, interesting newsletter editor, Hayley Sperling. What's good?
Hello, Bianca. Those were so many nice adjectives. Thanks for having me.
Just seeing you inspired me. So you are kicking off this week with kind of a tough story around housing fights.
Yeah. So housing's a hot topic in Madison, no matter what day of the week, season of the year it is. But things are getting really spicy these days over on the west side. So in case you've missed it, last week, more than 100 residents crammed into a public meeting at Val Phillips Memorial High School in order to express their discontent with the city's West area plans. Oftentimes, yelling at officials, booing them, jeering, and all the like. It was kind of a rowdy meeting. I watched some videos. But first, before we get too deep into the weeds of that, I want to make sure that we all know what exactly the West area plan is, because that's what people are fighting about, right? So it's part of this new framework for urban planning that the city approved back in 2022. So it carves the city of Madison into 12 planning zones, essentially, each of which have its own 10-year plan to help lay the groundwork for future development, zoning, and all the like, to help make the city more equitable as it grows, because we are a growing city. Madison is getting bigger. Dane County is getting bigger. So the West Area Plan specifically includes recommendations to add more housing density in areas that are right now mainly zoned for single-family homes. It also suggests adding more mixed-use developments near transit corridors, and specifically creating a paved and lit pedestrian and bike path through the Sauk Creek Greenway, which has already been kind of a controversial piece in itself because it calls for removing a decent amount of trees in order to make that project happen, and people were not happy about that. But also, bikers and pedestrians need safe places to walk. And so these plans are really, really important. And this is not the first meeting that the city has had about the West Area Plan. In fact, it's been holding meetings for the past couple of years about this. And this one really got people going, in part because it's just a conversation that people in the city are having more often, you know? And again, these plans are very important because the city is expected to grow roughly 40% by 2050, which is kind of insane. And that figure I got from the Cap Times, which is nuts. And where are these people going to live? That's the question, you know? And as the mayor put it to the Cap Times in a previous interview, she said pretty much every neighborhood needs to be open to housing. Every neighborhood needs to be able to do their part. And that's why, in order to do this, the plan uses practices such as proactive zoning recommendations. So this sort of helps pave the way for smoother development and helps just sort of, again, emphasize that, if we are doing these proactive zoning measures, then we want more housing here. We want more density here. It's building equity into the future. But again, this isn't just sort of an end-all be-all stamp of approval. City council still needs to sign off on its approval. So again, people got really riled up at this meeting because there was a lot of sort of mis and disinformation going around. Recently, yeah, you hate to see it. The publisher of the Cap Times had written this opinion article kind of bemoaning the loss that has not happened of his Hill Farms neighborhood. So to put clearly, Hill Farms West Side neighborhood. And it basically summed up, like if the city has its way, then we're basically letting developers do whatever they want and they're going to get rid of our pool and so and so and so and so. And people got really riled up about that, especially about the pool, because a lot of people had like interpreted it as like something that has already happened. And like, to be clear, like that has not happened, Like no one has already come in and said like, yes, I'm going to take over this pool and redevelop it into, condos or whatever. Like that is not the case here. And so people were very incensed and they were very worried about losing the character of their neighborhood. And to be clear, to put this all into perspective, I think the Cap Times, again, summed it up really well. The West Side does not look like the rest of the city of Madison. So to put this into numbers, the median annual income for the West Siders is closer to $82,000 compared to $70,000 for the rest of the city. And in other demographic distinctions, more than 70% of West area residents are white, compared to 68% citywide. And the Cap Times also notes that the area has a 10% higher home ownership rate than the rest of Madison. So again, that's something to keep in mind because, like we say, there are a lot of people here that are crying about what is happening to their neighborhood, but this neighborhood is not necessarily representative of the city as a whole. That's not to say that their opinion doesn't matter. It doesn't count because these are people that have been living in Madison for decades. These are folks that have bought homes and have lived in this city for a very long time. And like, that's super important to keep in mind. And it's super important to have all these voices heard, but it's also important to know that Madison is growing and changing, and in order for us to accommodate more people, something's got to give. And sometimes that comes in the form of proactive zoning measurements, which is, super exciting, apparently. And Madison isn't the only city that has been doing this. A recent column in the Isthmus pointed out that Minneapolis, my hometown, shout out, made national news for eliminating single-family zoning in 2020. They banned parking requirements and encouraged new apartment construction along commercial corridors. And since then, the consequences, the city has continued to grow and rents have decreased, which is also awesome. And a similar thing is happening in Austin, Texas, which is a place that Madison loves to compare itself to. We call ourselves what? The Austin of the Midwest or whatever. And Austin actually saw rents decrease more than 12% in 2023 after constructing more than 34,000 apartments since 2021. So essentially, the increase in apartments led to an increase in vacancy, which leads to lower housing prices because it shifts the power from the landlords to the renters. And in Madison, we are a city where landlords have a lot of power. So This is a conversation that is really important for our city to be having and for our residents to be having because, again, this West Area plan, this is only one of 12 plans that we are going to have to go through. And This is like literally the first one that we're just starting to kind of like have these conversations and put into place. So I'm excited, anxiously excited to see what comes out of it. I'm glad that this is sparking bigger conversations.
Yeah.
Madison, we have a lot of good problems, right? Like people want to live here. The quality of life is great. There are a lot of opportunities for high paying jobs between the university and healthcare and technology and what have you. These, again, it's good problems to have, but as we kind of continue into the future, things need to grow and things need to change. So how do we get there? More conversations, more talking to each other. I don't know, maybe fewer opinion columns, more opinion columns, more reading good news. I'm not sure.
Or we could just stop growing.
Yes.
Tell everyone at the university, stop being innovative, stop attracting more people to come here. Tech industry, stop coming. We don't want you.
Right, because we have to alternative.
We have to look at where the rubber meets the road. And I was not at the meeting, but I saw the picture And hearing the story of it makes me think of Parks and Rec and the great
Oh my
hero
God.
Leslie Knope and their city council meetings, and how she's like, when I have people yell at me, I think that it is them just caring loudly.
Yes.
So I definitely second. It's excellent that people care and people are showing up. Also, be respectful. And if you feel super disrespected, you can say that in a respectful way. Our city workers, they are out here and they are not really paid very much. And we have changes on the way. We have changes that are here now that need to be reckoned with. And also we do need to think about who are the people who are raising a stink, like you said, like these single family homes. I can't drive around Madison and not think like, oh, geez, like I really like it. But all of these like 1-story spaces, like how are we going, like this little isthmus, how are we going to hold all of these new people in 25 years, a growth by 40%? Like something has to give. There is a generational component to this conversation. I like things the way they are. Change is hard. And also sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring, and it's important. And like you said, I do think people are caring loudly in this situation, but it's also important to, again, look at the bigger picture and like step back and like see like what are you fighting for? Because again, there has been some misinformation out there that people are worried about like houses getting bulldozed and whatnot. But like that I cannot emphasize enough. Like that is not what's happening here. That's not what's happening here. The city is just trying to take proactive steps in order to build more density and to make room for more people. So we'll see how it goes. This is really just the conversation, but there's more to come. There's more to come, and this is going to be a story that we're going to be watching for a while, I'm sure.
Yes. And talking about more engagement, we will be talking about elections. But before we dive into any of that news, we're going to take a quick break. All right, man, it's a spicy roundup today. We got to talk about the election. But first, hey, we're in our first ever official membership campaign. And we are already getting in new besties and friends rolling in. And it feels really good. Hayley, how are you feeling? You're seeing that, yeah?
It feels so good. Yeah, like you said, we're getting so many new friends joining on our membership. And it just makes me so happy, right? Because these are real people, real Madisonians who are stepping up and saying like, I appreciate what you do. I value your work and I want to support you. And to all of you who are in our membership, whether you're a friend or a bestie, like, thank you so much. Because again, membership is such a big part of the work that we do here. It really helps fuel us. It helps keeps us going. And members help bring a lot to the table too, right? Like folks out there have a lot of good ideas for stories and for conversations, and it's a really good jumping off point. So I am so thankful for all of the folks who have stepped up and joined our membership. Thank you to Stephanie, Richard, Steve, Harrison, Michelle. These are just some of the people that have joined our membership this week, and we're so excited. And if you want a shout out, if you want to be part of this cool squad, these cool cats, you can head to our website, madison.citycast.fm, and get hip with the in crowd. Thank you all so much. I'm endlessly appreciative.
Yes. So become a member. We'll look forward to seeing you. If you want to go ad free, that's also one of the perks. So there are perks to being a member, as Hayley said. Back to our original programming. Primary election day is around the corner, and our early voting has already begun. As of this Tuesday, for the state of Wisconsin, you can early vote. So either you've already requested your early absentee ballots, they should have arrived to you already by Monday ahead of that, or you can vote in person at a polling location early through the end of this month, March 31st. So quickly, I want to talk about what's not on the ballot. You're not going to see congressional races. That primary is in August. But there's plenty on the ballot. So what is our presidential primary. At this point, both parties have their presumptive nominee at this stage of the race, President Biden and former President Donald Trump. But you will still see their competitors, even if they've dropped out of the race. So don't let that alarm you. That's just what's going on there. There will also be 2 statewide referendum questions. So that's big. Possible constitutional amendments that would impact the way our elections are run. One, around who can fund our election process, and two, who can work and perform tasks as an election worker. We'll dig into that more. And there'll also be a number of local races, of course, including an expected pretty big turnover for the Dane County Board. We'll be talking to Allison Garfield of the Cap Times. Super excited to talk to her early next week for a deep dive on the local races. And there are some spicy contests there. So if you want to go check out who's on your ballot, head to our show notes for some links. We'll have that there. And then also, high recommendation to listen to our Conversation Tuesday with Allison. But we're going to dig into a couple of the beats that will be there, the presidential and the referenda. The presidential primary race kind of feels all said and done, right? But the big thing that's interesting is, what's going around with this movement around voting uninstructed or, basically uncommitted. That's being pushed on the Democratic side. There are a lot of left-leaning folks who are pretty appalled by the U.S.'s involvement in and complicity with the Israeli government and their attacks on Palestine. And now over 30,000 Palestinians are dead, and people are not happy. There's been a movement for Democrats to stop or drop support of Biden. Saw a good piece from Scott Gordon, the publisher of Tone Madison, on this movement. And there is a quote in there that our neighboring Michiganders, they had more than 100,000 voters choose the uncommitted option in their state's primary, which I was like, dang, that's a lot. That is a lot. So all of this, at this point, April is just a primary. So how this is going to play out in the November election, it's too soon to tell. But also, Congress people are under the same scrutiny from left-leaning voters and voices. Want to note that Senator Tammy Baldwin, who's up for election this cycle, signed onto a letter this week with a number of other Democratic senators that calls on Biden to support a two-state solution. So an independent Israel alongside an independent Palestine, and to publicly outline a path for the U.S. to recognize a non-militarized Palestinian state. So that's something.
Yeah. That was a huge move, seeing that letter come across. I think I think other Democrats are starting to realize, too, that this is a huge issue for folks, and this is something that is just not going to go away, and that we, again, being the U.S., need to take action. And yeah, I mean, we talk about voting uncommitted or whatnot. 100,000 votes in Michigan. I mean, when you think about how much Biden won Wisconsin by in our last election, 100,000 votes, that's a lot. People are really making their voices heard, and these elections are really time to make your voice heard. But yeah, tell us more about these referenda that are on the ballot, because a couple of people have actually have written in to me asking what's up with them.
Yes, they're always kind of a curveball when you get to, at least for me, and I'm experiencing this, but you look at it, it's just like this legalese language. What does this mean?
Right.
So yeah, there are two, and they're calling to amend our state constitution. And it's coming from state Republicans following the 2020 election, when private funds, these grants, came into the state to fund the voting infrastructure during the pandemic. And Republicans felt the money was unfairly allocated because it came to major cities. And so it, ended up benefiting Democrats over them, is what they said. So the money went to 5 of, Wisconsin's largest cities. So they're not wrong about that. So to break it down, the GOP, they are pro-amendment, so they would be a yes vote for these referenda, and Dems are against it, so a no vote. One would bar state and local governments from using private funds to conduct elections. So that's kind of in direct response to that, not wanting funds to be coming in and supporting some cities over others. The other would say that only election officials designated by law can conduct election-related tasks. So, Republicans say that this would bolster trust in our election systems. And Democrats are saying, actually, we need as much help as we can get. And the state hasn't funded our election systems to work properly without additional assistance. So there's sort of this clash there. And currently the state constitution doesn't limit state or local governments from receiving non-governmental grants to help with election-related tasks. So if these referenda pass, that would change that, and also would change who could be tapped to help out in an election, because there's this thought that nefarious activity is happening. But despite there isn't much evidence of that, and that's been time and again proven and shown that our elections are pretty solid, but there continues to be this drumbeat that there's nefarious activity. So I think Democrats are really concerned with something like that this is more attempts to suppress the vote, that we actually need more funding and support to help get out the vote and allow for people to get their vote counted.
Lots to talk about with voting. Always, always. Yeah, those referenda, they're always they just kind of sneak up on you and they're just like, oh, here's all these 2 things that could like literally change our state constitution. And like that's what these are like changes to the state constitution. So it's important to know about them. But as you mentioned, Bianca, you know, like they're written in these like legalese languages that can be hard to digest. And so I think the big takeaway is that like you said, you know, do we want to be able to take outside funds in order to help run our elections? And when it comes to running smooth elections, like you said, like we need all the help we can get because Madison is a bigger city. We have a lot of voters. We're very civically engaged. And that's what's up, you know, like Madison needs help.
Yeah.
Bigger cities need help because they got more people.
And voting is good, right? And early voting is good. And the quote from our Dane County clerk, Scott McDonald, he always encourages people to vote early because you never know what's going to happen on election day. And that is so very true. So if you're voting early absentee, get that into the mail and you can track that progress at myvote.wi.gov. Otherwise, you can, find your polling place, find the hours. Remember, you still need a voter ID. So check that you have everything updated there. Should note, absentee drop boxes are still not a thing. They were banned 2 years ago, so don't expect that this election. But there's actually movement that could change that before the August primary and November election. So that's interesting. The Wisconsin Supreme Court is hearing arguments on a new challenge to the drop box ban on May 13th. So if you're wondering about that, we'll be paying close attention to that story. Hayley, I always appreciate having you here on the Roundup. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is lovely.
See you next week. Y'all, some quick fun, a little ditty before you go. We've got a giveaway, but you gotta earn it. We've got 2 pairs of tickets for the Wisconsin Film Festival. And if you want them, email us the correct answer to the following trivia. You ready? What's the name of the longest serving Wisconsin Supreme Court justice in our state's history? Hint, they held other impressive firsts in our state. The first 2 people to email us at madison@citycast.fm with the right answer get the tickets. So please include your name and your preferred email address. And note, these tickets can only be used for screenings that are not already sold out. Aren't giveaways fun? You're worth it. That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, your host. We're produced by Phil Circus, and this week, Elizabeth Kama and Dylan Brogan. Molly Stentz is our executive producer. Our theme music is by Carl Christensen. Hayley Sperling is our newsletter editor. Remember, you can always get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to Madison Minutes. And if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast with the person who always asks you, have you voted yet? See you back here Monday morning with more news from around the city. Until then,